Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and having learned quite a few things from, through, and from within human interactions, and having pursued and completed my master's in business administration and in clinical psychology, I today wish to talk about the cost price of integrity. So many a times, many of us, or at least a few of us, would come across these kind of sayings. It takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of heart to live an integrated life. Or another saying that goes something like this, that integrity is doing the right thing when nobody is looking. When nobody is paying attention to you. Because quite naturally, when we think that others are looking at us, or we think that others would pay attention to us, and probably even hold judgments towards us, many of us tend to act in very righteous, prescribed ways. And that includes me as well. And I'm very deliberately and intentionally using the words prescribed righteousness, prescribed rightness, because we all want to present good images about ourselves. We all want to present good storylines about ourselves. And it is only when we want to present this good image, this good storyline about ourselves, wherein we'll not be required to stand alone by ourselves. Unknowingly, very unconsciously, we tend to betray ourselves. Unknowingly, unintentionally, unconsciously, there happens a disintegration in our consciousness. In our consciousness with regards to our thoughts, our words, our behaviors, and our actions. It is here where we give in to the pressures of others, to the pressures of the culture, to the pressures of the family, to the pressures of peers, where we split from our wholesomeness. It is here that we abandon and reject ourselves so that others don't abandon and reject us. And all of this many a times happen at a very unconscious level, at a very primitive survival level, because our evolution was designed to help us survive. Our evolution was designed to help us fit in with the group, fit in with our community, fit in with our culture. But it was not designed to help us stand out as an individual, because standing out, the way we evolved, would at some point in time cause our literal death. And that wiring, that primitive wiring, is still very much intact within our nervous system and within our psyche. So many a times, if not all the times, integrity, like everything else, will come with its cost price, and it may cost us everything that we hold dear to ourselves, that we probably even cling to, that we attach ourselves with. It may even come close to costing our very lives as well. And yet, many a times we would also realize that the times we have not functioned, we have not lived our lives from integrity, through integrity, it has costed our sense of peace. It has costed our sense of trust. It has costed our self-worth. It has costed our self-trust. It has costed our physical health. It has costed our emotional health. It has costed our relational health. And it has costed our wholesomeness. And so no matter what we do or we choose not to do, no matter what we think or we choose not to think, no matter what we say or we choose not to say, no matter what we do or choose not to do, no matter what decisions we make or we choose not to make, no matter what stand do we take or we choose not to take, will always come with a cost price. And we need to get aware of the cost price, the realistic cost price, rather than fragments of fearful imagination, rather than fragments of those imaginations that actually dim down our curiosity, to get a more realistic picture in front of us, but heightens our imagination of fear and thereby runs the circuit of anxiety within us and keeps us stuck in that anxiety driven fear loop, which very unfortunately dims the capacity of our wise self, of our wholesome self, of our godlike self come into the picture, come through the picture. So, coming back to the understanding of the cost price for integrity or the cost price of integrity or living life with integrity, I can think of 3 or 4 examples to help us understand and to help us correlate the cost that it takes to live with integrity, the cost price that one will need to pay in order to live with integrity. So, first being, let's try and not preach, not teach what we cannot practice. And the best example in order to connect with that thought is of the character of PK from the movie PK itself, wherein this alien character who lands on Earth to kind of just study species that somewhat look like him comes to a big understanding that on this planet, most people are living a very disintegrated life, are living a very fear based life, are not living the lives that they actually want to live because there's a huge disconnection with what they think, what they say, what they feel in their hearts, and what they put out in their actions and their behaviors. And despite seeing all of that, he still chooses to live from his place of integrity. Despite being bullied, despite being excluded, despite being ridiculed, despite being shamed to some degree, despite being tortured physically, emotionally, and psychologically, he still chooses to live from his place of integrity, wherein he didn't lose his compassion, wherein he didn't lose his curiosity. Curiosity to understand, curiosity and courage to question, the courage to stand almost all alone when nobody wanted to understand him. But the benefit of that was that he did not lose his sense of wholesomeness, that he did not lose his courage, that he did not lose his curiosity, that he did not lose his rationality, that he did not lose his emotional stability, that he did not lose his truth, that he did not lose his values, that he did not lose his clarity, and that he did not lose his wisdom, that he did not lose his peace of mind, his peace of heart, and his peaceful sleep. He did not lose his physical, his emotional, and his mental health, but rather got 1 or 2 friends, 1 or 2 supporters who were willing to be included in his group, who were willing to include him in their group, who were also willing to develop the courage to live an integrated life, to live a curious life, to live a courageous life. Now, when I mentioned that living with integrity or the cost price of integrity can be losing almost everything that we have accumulated, that we have clung on to, that we have attached ourselves to, can all almost be taken away. And the best example that I can think of is from the recently released movie Huck, wherein this lady, the character played by Yami Gautam, in keeping with her own values, in keeping with her own sensibilities, decides to stand up for something that she was not willing to compromise upon, decides to stand for her integrity, for her respect, for her wholesomeness, which she wanted to keep intact. And unfortunately, the cost price to that was she had to gather the courage to face her own fears, to be able to take a stand, which in a way seemingly went against her family, seemingly seemed to go against the community, seemingly seemed as an act of rebellion in the society in which she was living in seemingly was an act of rebellion against every kind of authority. Authorities that showed their face inside the house, inside her gully mohallas, within the neighborhood, within the culture, within the religion, and probably to a degree, even within the constitution, wherein choosing to live from integrity, she, just like PK, was bullied from all corners. Physically, emotionally, and psychologically. She, at one point in time in the movie, also accepts that she would have given in to the pressure if a little condition, if a tiny little condition of hers would have been met. Because that condition was not met, she decided to confront and face every bit of her fear with courage, with grace, with dignity. And when she decided to do that for herself, just like PK found his support in Jaggu and a few other people, she also found her supporters. She also found her pillars of support in her father and a few other people. People who made her fight, people who made her decision, their own fight and their own decision to bring about certain changes, to stand for certain changes that they felt were necessary for the well-being of one and a lot of others as well, which should also help us realistically understand that change also, even when good, comes with a cost price. The cost price of walking into the unfamiliar territory, which requires courage, which requires us to face our fears. And that is never an easy thing to do. Because even when change is healthy, even when change is good, when it's a wise change, it does demand the loss of the familiar. It does thereby also demand to grieve the loss of the familiar, to grieve the loss of the known. And if I can talk of a real life example, the lady who beautifully talks about living life from integrity, Martha Beck, would also tell us that choosing to live her life with integrity costed her everything in life. Her friendships, her profession, her academia, her marriage, her family, her religion, her community. Just like it did with the character played by Yami Gautam, who also received life-threatening threats wherein people had threatened to take her life and her children's life away. And yet today the prolific writer, one of the leading life coaches in the world, also tells us that it took away everything that she ever had and gave her everything else that she always wanted. It gave her a sense of peace, a sense of wholesomeness, a sense of purpose, a sense of ease with herself that she never had before she started to live her life with integrity. And if I could cite my own personal example, wherein given the last video, wherein I had mentioned about taking up an exercise, where we are penning down the lies that we have told so far, the big lies, the small lies, the white lies, and everything in between, and list down as many of them as possible. The advantages of those lies and the disadvantages of those lies, wherein I was functioning not from a place of integrity, and then also journaling down all of the truths that I have said and lived my life with, and the advantages and the disadvantages. I, somewhere after taking up this activity, physically taking up this activity, I realized I had lived my life out of fear. I had lived my life with lesser curiosity. I lived my life with lesser compassion. I've lived my life mostly by blaming others. I've lived my life feeling helpless and feeling very judgmental towards others and towards myself, and also feeling that others were constantly judgmental about me. I've lived life with a lot more physical ailments, with no emotional stability, with a lot less courage, with a lot less self-acceptance, and thereby lot less self-love as well. Or I can even say barely any self-love or no self love at all as well. I've lived my life with a lot of physical ailments, with a lot of emotional ailments, and with a lot of psychological ailments as well. I've lived with no sense of peace, but rather a lot of conflict, disease, and distress in my own body and in my own psyche. I've lived with a lot of guilt and a lot of shame as well. When I've operated from the place of disintegrity, from a place wherein I lost my wholesomeness, from a place wherein I was operating from so much of fear, from so much of everything else that I've mentioned before, that to a large degree I had rejected my own self. And I'm talking about my whole wholesome self. And having done that, I can honestly say, I can truthfully say that that's not a very healthy place to live and operate from. That that's a place of illness and not of wellness. And yes, living from that place of integrity did come with some cost price. Not as humongous and not as drastic as were faced by Martha Beck or as were faced by the character of Yami Gautam in the movie Huck. But yes, some cost prices needed to be paid for me to live with peace, for me to start living from a wholesomeness, for me to find compassion for myself and for others, for me to start living with a sense of curious courage again, with lesser guilt, with lesser shame, and with a lot of generosity towards myself and towards others. So we'll always be finding ourselves at crossroads at some point in time or the other to make some choices, and every choice will come with its price, will come with its cost price. And it all depends on us. If we choose to live from a place of ill-being, which is where I was living from a place of disintegrity, or from a place of well-being, from a place of wholesomeness, from a place of peace and ease within ourselves and for ourselves. Let's try and reflect on that. Let's try and take up this activity for ourselves. Let's try and see if we can accept and honor our truth without it being broadcasted to anyone else. And let's try and see how wide is the gap between our disintegrated and our whole self. Let's try and do that for ourselves, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contextual content of these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.